All the trigger warnings: body dysmorphia, eating disorders, illness, bullying, gaslighting, and trolls. You've been warned. Right before I left YouTube last year, I talked about having experienced body dysmorphia and disordered eating earlier in my life. I also discussed my desire to begin exercising again after many years of being sedentary, and the fear that I had that if I started exercising, I would fall back into those unhealthy thought patterns and risk developing an eating disorder or body dysmorphia again. I also discussed how women's fitness is sexualized. I feared that if I got into fitness again, I'd begin to see myself through a sexualized lens, which I did not want to do. I originally opened up because I wanted any other women who've had similar experiences to not feel so alone. But I also wanted to not feel so alone and to see if anyone out there shared my issues and concerns, because having the thoughts and fears that I've had is very isolating. So I was looking for support and advice, and I felt that we were building a supportive community here. But when I discussed these difficult topics, I was either criticized or bullied or trolled. I'll lay it out and then let you decide whether these were legitimate criticisms. First, I was criticized for linking women's fitness to eating disorders and body dysmorphia. Some women were claiming there is no such link and that connecting those things was purely my invention, and that I was making up that connection with an anti-woman agenda intending to make women feel disempowered. Those women claimed that fitness is fitness. It's just neutral and health-oriented. It's never unhealthy, and to suggest that it can be is disempowering to women. I was also told that my personal fears were atypical and that eating disorders and body dysmorphia are very rare. Furthermore, it was suggested that sharing our personal experiences is not helpful and that feminists should speak only in generalities and not share stories from our personal lives. There were a few other things that I'll get to mentioning later, but those were some of the main criticisms. Being so vulnerable and sharing my deepest fears and seeing how my openness was used as an opportunity to shame and gaslight me was really, really painful and made me need to take a step back from YouTube. I'm going to retell the story now as I told it last year and see if anything has changed in this conversation in the time that I've been away. So here it is. When I was in my 20s and early 30s, my life revolved around fitness. After college, I traveled around the country competing in triathlon. But after a bike accident, I gave up triathlon and got seriously into running and rock climbing. On top of that, I did yoga, Pilates, and dance. And for a while, I was exercising 3 to 6 hours a day, every single day, whilst working full-time as an analyst and going to school. I even had my own personal training business on the side. How did I have time for all of that? Looking back, it seems crazy. I made time because I loved how fitness made me feel. To me, there's nothing like a runner's high. I've had morphine in the ER, and the high from that is a joke compared to how running makes me feel. Seriously, it was never a chore for me to fit in hours and hours of exercise in a day. I never had to motivate. I'm just wired to love exercise. And I had a lot of great experiences traveling and making friends and challenging myself and living that lifestyle. And when I look back on that time in my life, I first think of all of those positive feelings and memories. But then I remember there was a darker side to it. There were notebooks full of every single thing I ate, listing the calories of each food. There was a feeling of failure if I went over some arbitrary number. There was weighing myself and writing my weight down every day. And a feeling of failure if I gained weight. There was staring in the mirror, hating my body. There was starving myself when my BMI was already 19. There was fainting in the gym parking lot, smacking my head on the asphalt, and waking up in the ER 6 hours later. I suffered a head injury because I was dieting, and that didn't happen only once. I never felt good enough. I never felt like I was going to get there. And I thought feeling that way was a normal part of womanhood. I couldn't imagine any other way of thinking. This never-ending state of discomfort was my burden to bear as a woman, something men didn't have to deal with because they had just gotten lucky and been born male. There was a lot of joy in fitness for me, but there was also this darkness. I was striving for something that didn't exist, the perfect body. But I was convinced that if I only worked hard enough, I could achieve it. But the closer I got to what I thought of as perfect, the worse I actually felt about myself. 2016 was a turning point in my life. That year, I got really sick, and I could no longer exercise the way I had been. I was sick for 2 years, and on many days, just getting out of bed was a success. I lost muscle and fitness, and I struggled to even see a future for myself. During my illness, I started spending more time online. And in my travels, I discovered feminism, and it really clicked for me. I'd never before been exposed to these ideas. I started reading everything I could, and it was like opening a secret door into a world of liberation. I was so wowed by the idea that a woman has value beyond her body. And I learned to question the messages I had received my whole life, like that it's a woman's destiny to hate her body and strive for perfection, or that women's bodies and diets are legitimate topics for public conversation. After I found feminism, I spent years trying to undo decades of mental conditioning. It was work. It does not just happen without doing work. I had to really retrain my thinking, but I did. I was successful. I actually stopped thinking of myself as an object. I stopped judging myself according to society's ridiculous standards. I freed myself from that. I stopped wearing makeup. I stopped shaving. I stopped all those rituals that subconsciously reinforce the idea that I'm an object. I stopped caring how I looked. I practiced intuitive eating and stopped paying attention to calories. I shifted my view of myself from a third-person view to a first-person view. Around 2019, I started to feel somewhat better after my illness. As I healed, I got back to working out here and there. The ability to move again was a gift to be celebrated. Running a mile or doing 15 minutes of yoga in my bedroom felt miraculous. But I never took up a regular exercise routine, and I became very afraid to re-engage with the relationship I had previously had with fitness. Even though exercise is so important for health reasons, I avoided it. My fear was that if I started working out again, I would fall into my old patterns. I was afraid that those grooves were worn so deep it would be unavoidable. I was afraid that all the hard work I had done, unlearning those objectifying thoughts and behaviors, and learning for the first time to see myself as a whole person, would be for nothing. At that point, it had been years since I had looked in a mirror and seen flaws, believe it or not. I was completely content with my body and in a very liberated mental space. I had stopped comparing myself to other women or societal ideals. I had total confidence in myself and in my body. And although many of us think body positivity is problematic, and I do agree in some aspects, I did start to love how I looked as I was and to appreciate my body for all it could do. I could look in a mirror and genuinely say, I love you, and not pick myself apart and not feel like I needed to change anything. My self-esteem was the highest I'd ever experienced. And after a lifetime of feeling like I was never enough, that was huge. And I was afraid of losing that. I didn't want to lose the unconditional, uncritical appreciation I had developed for my body. And I also didn't want to feel like I had failed as a feminist. What if my liberation was actually tenuous and not as solid as I thought? So although part of me wanted to exercise for health reasons, I didn't. I remained sedentary. I was afraid. So that all is what I said That is the story that I told last year. And after discussing this topic, I was bombarded with so much noise. I found myself hearing women saying things like, "You're telling women they shouldn't exercise," which is anti-feminist, or claiming that I was promoting the objectification of women and that I was making a connection between fitness and sexualization where there is none. That's in addition to all the things I mentioned earlier. I had tried to be open and vulnerable in this space I created for myself to tell these kinds of stories in hopes that they will help some women out there. And instead, I just got this very toxic response, and it was so hurtful. And I allowed these comments to harass me off of YouTube. But this story has a happy ending, so let me get on with it. When I left YouTube after being berated about my fears regarding fitness and body image, I still had those fears, and I was not any closer to resolving them. But sometimes, cliche as it is, confronting your fears is the only way to get over them and to see if there's anything to them. And I did want to test how strong my liberation was. And I wanted to test how well I had reshaped my thinking about my self-worth. So I did start exercising over the summer, and I have kept exercising ever since. I started riding my bike again for the first time since that accident all those years ago. And I just had so much fun. I felt like a kid again, bombing down hills at 40 miles an hour. I even got Queen of the Mountain on Strava, which I'm really proud about. I joined a rowing club and got out on the water, which was amazing. And through rowing, I made some female friends in real life, IRL. I joined a pool and started swimming. I've been walking and hiking and doing physio in hopes that someday I can run again. And I've been super dedicated to my yoga practice, both in studio and at home, which has been so helpful, both physically and especially mentally. I started doing yoga 18 years ago, and I've never been more in love with it than I am now. It's just pure joy to me. And speaking of joy, what I'm happy to report is that in this time, I have rediscovered all of the joyful parts of exercise without any of the pain. The fears I had haven't come to pass. I'm still eating intuitively for health. I'm not counting calories, not weighing myself. I'm not getting lost in the mirror. I'm not comparing myself to other women, I'm not obsessing about my body, and I'm not seeing myself in a sexualized way. All the workouts I'm doing because they're fun and they feel good, and that's it. I am having a lot of gratitude for what my body can do. One big difference is that I'm in a 40-year-old body now, which is kind of its own exciting adventure and something I'd like to talk more about in the future. I am honoring where I'm at and praising my body for what it can do. I'm enjoying being in the moment and on the journey without putting pressure on myself to achieve anything specific. That said, I am seeing improvements in my fitness. I am getting stronger. For example, in the summer, I couldn't do a single push-up, and the other day I did 4. That might not sound like a lot, but technically it's an infinite improvement from where I was. My legs feel stronger, my back is stronger, and my flexibility has improved. I'm getting faster on the bike and in the pool. I've gained weight and muscle, and it's been truly empowering to see myself transform in this way. Before this fitness journey, I would have told you that I was 100% completely content with my body, and I couldn't be any more happy with it. And that was true at the time. But my happiness with my body has only increased since I started exercising again. It's literally the opposite of what I feared would happen, and I am ecstatic about that, both because it just feels good and because it confirms that the work I did in studying radical feminism and reshaping my thoughts, that hard work I did, was effective. I'm really glad that I challenged myself to go on this journey to discover my self-worth. Nourishing and caring for our bodies, practicing non-judgment towards ourselves, and giving ourselves what we need to be physically healthy because we are inherently worth it. should be cornerstones of feminism. And not in a phony, materialistic self-care way, but in a way that's about our strength and flexibility and heart health and bone health and longevity. We need to reclaim women's fitness from the way it's been sexualized and centered on sex appeal. And yes, contrary to some women's opinions, I still do believe there is ample evidence to suggest that women's fitness is sexualized. I want to keep reinforcing those ideas for myself so that I don't ever fall back into those mental traps again, because I know I don't have to. And I also want to share this for any woman out there who needs that message too. So I'm going to try to come up with some fitness and health content that fits within that message. I don't have a clue what that is at this point. If you have any suggestions, let me know. But it's something I want to work towards eventually. Until I come up with something, I may just keep sharing my own fitness journey with you in snippets as it progresses. I'm really happy with the content we've been making lately. I'm so grateful to my angel and my rock, Radical Ramblings, who has been amazingly supportive throughout my entire journey. She's a lot of the reason I'm here because she reminds me that genuine female friendship and sisterhood is totally possible and it's worth doing the work. I'm going to keep working on women-centered content, but when my story is relevant, I'm going to share that too because I do believe that we learn from each other's stories. I learned so much from those of you who share with me, and I truly appreciate that. And I love more than anything when you tell me about your positive experiences with fitness too. But also feel free to share your struggles or wherever you're at because we can all learn from each other and support each other, whatever point of the journey that we're on. So on that note, I will say thank you for listening to this very long story. I just had to get all of that off my chest, and now I did, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.